Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, welcome to this episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And in this episode, I am so excited to share with you our new Thriving Farmer Summit. Now, this has been in the works for a couple months now, so we've been putting the pieces together, and you may have heard me mention it once or twice, but now it's ready for you guys to enjoy. And the live event, it's a virtual live event, so it'll be happening online, so you can do it from the comfort of your couch, is happening December 6th through 8th. But I highly encourage you right now to go to thrivingfarmersummit.com and sign up. And we've got a bunch of free giveaways going on and all sorts of fun things happening and lead up to the event. So you want to make sure you go today and sign up. So a little bit more about the Thriving Farmers Summit. And we have 30 speakers, everyone from Joel Salatin, Karina Bench, Brian Bates, Julia Shanks, Curtis Stone, Ray Tyler, brand new farmers like Amanda Yeckel, Oscar Chavez, Nick Farah, and Lex and Beth Anatonic, Carrie Chlebanowski, and intermediate farmers such as Katrina Becker, as well as we have farmers that have been farming for a few years, such as Katrina Becker and Audrey Tehan, Ray Tyler, all sharing different aspects of thriving as a farmer. So the summit's over 3 days. So the first day is all about farm business. The second day is all about marketing and sales. And the third day is all about innovative crops. And so these presenters are sharing detailed cutting edge techniques, tricks, and tips on building your business, selling more with innovative marketing and innovative crops they're growing and profiting from. So what I'm going to do in this episode is I am going to walk you through a couple of the highlights of the episodes that we recorded. And these episodes are awesome. So some of the episodes, like with Joel Salatin, are just him and I talking back and forth. Some of them are actually slide presentations. So they're sharing a lot of pictures. Sometimes they're sharing videos of their farm and exactly how they're doing things. When we talked to Oscar was talking about the exact hashtags he's using to bring in chefs for his business. So I'm going to share a few clips from these different presentations that I want you to learn from. So the first I'm going to share is Joel Salatin. So Joel obviously started us off at the summit. He talks about what it actually takes to thrive as a farmer. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to play where Joel starts talking about what it means to thrive as a farmer.
I think that it means, first of all, that you still are excited to get up every morning. That's important, that you just don't feel beat down. Mm-hmm. And I think secondly, it means that you are not so burdened with every day-to-day thing that you can't get away once in a while and have some downtime. Personal rejuvenation time. And I would say finally, my ultimate is a place where your kids want to be. And, if the kids like it and they want to be with you and want to be there, that's great. And if they don't, then that's concerning.
Yeah, because the next generation is the most important part of what we do here.
Well, ultimately, if the next generation isn't interested, we don't have a regenerative farm. We have a business that will employ us as long as we want to work. And then when we don't want to work, we don't have a business anymore. Mm-hmm. That's why I say that you actually don't have a farm business. You might have a farm, but you don't have a farm business until you employ two people from two different generations.
That's a really good point. And then the personal rejuvenation part, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go off farm for that. You just need a space for that.
You just need a space for that. Maybe it's, being able to read a book or take a picnic out to the back 40 or go fishing or whatever, but enough space to where whatever feeds your soul, that you have a chance to participate in that.
All right. So that was an excellent clip from Joel, kind of just sharing a little bit about what he feels a thriving farmer is. Now, the rest of the interview, we went on to chat about beginning farmers. We went on to chat about taking the step and going full time. We talked about the importance of regenerative local food and kind of the new trends that are happening, such as in the last 3 years, the average life expectancy for Americans has dropped yet again. So we just talk about how important what farmers do every day, especially those who are regenerative farmers who are working to create better food, is making a difference in the lives of our communities. So our next speaker is Julia Shanks. Now, Julia Shanks works with food and agriculture entrepreneurs to help them achieve financial and operations sustainability. Her background is in the chef world, came out of that, entered the agricultural world, and quickly realized that farmers did not know their numbers, did not know how to make money on farms. And so what she does now is she provides technical assistance and business coaching that enables them to launch, stabilize, and grow their ventures. So what I wanted to share here was a little bit about some core principles that Julia believes.
We have core principles, which we've already been talking about, that obviously you love farming, but you must be financially sustainable to keep doing what you do. And it's important to build the value of your time into cost of production, into your pricing strategies, and into your sales goals. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. And also thinking about not just like the dollar profits, but the profit per hour. Mm-hmm. So, there's many opportunities and many things you can do. And, think about it this way. Would you rather make $10 working 10 minutes or $20 working for an hour? What's the best use of your time? Certainly $20 is more than 10, but it takes more time to get it. So what is the value of your time, and honoring the value of your time?
Yeah, because I see way too many farmers working 60, even 70 hours a week and being like, well, I make $30,000 a year. And I'm like, actually, you are making $10 an hour. You're just making up for it in volume.
Right.
And that's not a sustainable way to live, especially when you decide you want to have kids, because they take time and family, and there's so many other things that you may want to do with your life.
And it's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
You'll burn out, and when you're young, you can work 60, 100 hours a week obviously, during peak season, you're doing 100 hours a week. We all are, but that's not sustainable, 52 weeks a year. You'll burn out, you'll be miserable, and you're no use for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I think about paying myself, a business owner paying themselves, there's several places that you can work it into the equation. And I think about it in terms of the pricing strategy and my pricing strategy model. And, if it takes you, let's say, 75 cents to grow a pound of tomatoes, you don't want to charge any less than 75 cents for a pound of tomato. You might as well stay in bed. Mm-hmm. The flip side of that, you might say, oh, well, I can charge $10,000 for a pound of...
All right. So there you had that awesome clip from Julia. Now, Julia presented on 5 signs of financial health in your business. So she actually walks us through the different areas that she looks at when she works with farmers and thinking about their numbers. And so one of the things I see so many farmers do is they work so hard growing food, they don't know the costs associated with it. They don't know where their money's coming from, where it's going. And so Julia has a great chat, and it's got some great ideas for you as you are looking at this winter, taking your farm business finances and checking them out. So that was an excellent presentation. And that is actually on day 1 of the summit as well. The next person we're going to go check out is actually Amanda. Now, Amanda started Cluckett Farm, a 1/4-acre market garden with 200 layer chickens located in the city of Las Vegas. So that's right. She is actually within the city limits of Las Vegas. And Amanda's background was not farming at all. In fact, she experienced depression before she became a farmer due to her work on the Las Vegas Strip. And so what I wanted to share here was a little bit of Amanda's story and how she got started farming.
Pays the bills, but I'm doing the farm thing on the side because it's my passion. I absolutely hated what I did for a living, and I had worked on the Strip as a server and a bartender for, 15 years. It's not my lifestyle, to live that life. It definitely wasn't a part of me. So it was very draining, and it was like soul crushing for a long time. And I stayed with it, but you just make so much money doing it. And I made more money doing that than farming for sure. It came from, to be completely honest with you, I started farming because I fell into this like deep state of depression, and it was just soul crushing. It was, I can't even explain it, but if you have listeners that have ever gone through a really bad time with depression, anxiety is another one, they totally would understand this. And it was, I mean, I was almost bedridden. It was so bad. I was miserable. I was a terrible mother. I had just gone through a terrible breakup. Really like life was falling apart. I had some really bad issues with some immediate family members, and they were going through, I mean, it was just terrible. And I remember like laying in bed and doing the Netflix thing, right? And I'm just going through, and then I'd switch over to YouTube and I'd be watching TV, and I somehow fell into a rabbit hole and found Curtis Stone's videos on YouTube. And I was like, whoa, I want to do that. And I didn't think about it monetarily. I wanted to do it for a job, but I just thought like, I love the idea of like small scale farming, and I have an acre of property that's just sitting there. So we got, you know, some chickens, and then it eventually just escalated. I went from 1 chicken to 200 chickens in a very short period of time. So I was like, what am I going to do with these eggs? So I started selling them to a restaurant downtown. And I walked in the door with like this whole sales pitch and my dozen of eggs. And I was like, okay, I'm going to say this. I practiced it. I was all nervous. And I walk in the door. I'm like, hi, I have fresh chicken eggs. And he was like, cool, we'll take 30 dozen. And I was like, wait, what? And then he was great. And he kept ordering from me. And he was like, you should plant some vegetables. I'll buy them from you. And I'm like, I have never grown anything in my life. So I was like, whatever, I'll do it.
I love Amanda's story. She's absolute go-getter, and it's amazing to watch her journey. She's in our small farm university, and just watch her journey in the last year of just how she's gone out there and developed new sales techniques, develops new ways to work with people in her community, because in Las Vegas, there's not a lot of farmers. And so she's developed very interesting ways with her community to partner with them and to bring local fresh food to different avenues, especially those who are underserved in your community. So it's a great story. She's a fabulous farmer, and always fun to hear her enthusiasm for what she's doing. The next speaker I wanted to share is the Curtis Stone. Now, Curtis has been a friend for a number of years, and in 2019, the summer of 2019, he did a 20-state farm tour where he visited a lot of farms. And what I had him come on is have him come on and share about some of those farms that he visited. And so he shared things on farms that were vertically integrated in the hemp space, farms that were doing multi-acre greenhouse operations, very small new farms in Quebec that were dialed in and really cranking it. And so it was really cool to hear this different models he shared and his take on where our industry is headed and the opportunities out there. In this clip, Curtis shares about the opportunities out there still in our space, as well as some of the different aspects between high value tomatoes and still very high value greens production.
Stuff, when you really get into the lower and lean, a lot of people don't really dive into what actually is the net return on those crops, because there's so much work doing those crops. But with greens, it's just not even close. Oh yeah. It's not even close.
Your margin is massive.
The margin in greens is ridiculous, especially if you can move hundreds to thousands of pounds a week. But to do that same kind of production with tomatoes, in some premium markets, you might get $8 a pound for really fine cherry tomatoes in April and May. But the work that you had to go, like I know JM has, I believe it's 2 guys working full time all year in the tomato greenhouses.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The constant fertilization, all the lower and lean, all the pruning, it's a lot of work. And especially when you're doing the real lower lean, you got to direct the way those plants grow, and you got to keep them off the ground. You really got to be meticulous about how you're managing that. And they're heavy feeders. And you got to bring in so many insects, and this is where the margin really starts to slip on these types of intensive farms. And that was the same up here with Andrew Manns. He spends, check this out, he spends $80,000 a year on bugs.
That's crazy.
80,000 on bugs.
Yes.
So pollinators, beneficials, all that stuff. 80 grand a year on bugs. Like, holy crap. You want to get into high tunnel greens production. It's like, it's not even, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, tomatoes and the nightshades are just those sexy crops because you look at, oh my gosh, I made $1,000 this week at the market on just tomatoes, but $800 of that went to the propane, the lower and lean, the labor. And here's the thing, what I tell people on tomatoes, if you have a greenhouse malfunction early in the season and lose a crop from a frost, you are instantly out lots and lots of money compared to greens.
Oh, yeah.
Greens are so much high margin. If you lose a crop or two, it doesn't matter.
I know.
And they're hardy.
They're hardy. And you don't need the inputs. Like, you don't need to heat the greenhouses, really.
All right. So that was an amazing clip that just go back between Curtis and me on the difference between tomatoes, which a lot of people think is a mega crop or a shiny, sexy crop, and just greens and just cranking through. Now, one of the other speakers, which I didn't have time to add in this episode, but we had Ray Tyler on, and Ray Tyler talked to us about kind of the updates that are happening in his farm and how he's changing as the market in Tennessee is changing and how he's going in full on greens production because that's really been working for him. Now, I've got another clip of Curtis that I wanted to share. Curtis starts talking about market saturation, and he really goes into just what he's learned from this 20-state trip and where there is still opportunity in the marketplace.
There's probably so many other cities in the United States that don't do this. And the same goes for greens. Like, 'cause, we always hear this whole thing like, well, everybody can't grow greens, right? Well, it's like, well, yeah, you can. Because if they're still coming from California, like if people in Michigan and New York State and all these other colder climate states are still getting greens from California, that means there's a market. And the same goes for microgreens, because a lot of the microgreens in the United States come from large operations that are doing overnight shipping around. Mm-hmm. And you can go and compete with that and offer a lower price for a local product because a lot of the margin gets eaten up in transport because overnight shipping is expensive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like there's still a market for a lot of this stuff, like despite what people think. It just depends on where you are. It's not a guarantee. But like, maybe it's worth moving to a place that's a fresh market. Because, I mean, like, come on. Market gardening is not even like 1%, not even 1% of the total food production that comes out of the United States that feeds the United States.
All right. So that was another great little bit from Curtis talking about still there's such a great opportunity in the market gardening space. Now, with he said on microgreens, so one of the other talks, which again, actually, he's coming up a little bit later, but he's talking about microgreens. They're less than a year old as a business, and they are crushing it. He just went full-time in the business. Him and his partner did, and it's amazing to hear what they're doing. So a little bit later in the episode, we're going to bring him in and get him to talk a little bit about how they are really leveraging microgreens and edible flowers to grow their full-time income from the farm. All right, so our next little interview clip here is with Carrie. Now, Carrie started the Looney Farm with her husband, Joe, to provide something good and beautiful to their community in a regenerative way. Now, Carrie is not in some easy-to-grow place like the Northeast or even the South. She lives in the middle of Oklahoma, which is a very hostile, very brutal environment. And in this clip, she talks just about how tough it has been to farm out there.
I always laugh and tell people like we're not temperate. Like there's no normal. If you don't like Oklahoma's weather, just wait a couple hours. A couple of weeks ago, we had our very first freeze or frost the day before it was 80 degrees. So things can change very quickly. This morning, it was 22 when we woke up. And so this is a very early freeze for Oklahoma. Not ready for that. My crop plan isn't ready for that. So it's been frustrating, and rain has been crazy this year. We had, I think, something like 20 inches of rain between March or April into late June, but then we had nothing for end of June through end of August. And when it's 100 degrees and we have a heavy clay soil, it just bakes.
Yeah. So you definitely have a challenging soil, and because of the rain, the stuff runs off a lot. You're using a lot of protection on that as well. Yeah. What main crops are you focused on?
So lettuces are our big thing. That's kind of how we got known in our area, was growing the Salanova lettuce mix. Working with Ray Tyler and his masterclass has really helped, and with you guys. So that's what we're known for primarily. We've had our struggles with that this year just because of the weather fluctuations. We lost a lot of stuff with that, and then the heat. Baby root vegetables.
I love Carrie. She is absolutely one of those farmers out there who is just day in and day out working to feed her community and involve her entire family in it too. It's really great to see how she's involved her family and how just they do it as a really a family farm. So let's move a little bit, and I wanted to share Brian Bates. Now, Brian Bates was absolutely one of our top podcast interviews, and I'll let you know a little secret. He was kind of hard to track down for this interview. One of the things I love about Brian is he has intentionally built a business that includes a team that really focuses, as we talk a couple of times in the episode, as a merry group of vegetable growers, a merry band of vegetable growers. And so I was really interested to talk to Brian and hear what he had to say about how do you build that team? How do you build that family of people on your farm that's really helping you take your farm operation to the next level? And so here's what he says.
Hard about this whole dynamic for me is like offering them more money has not really changed anything. Sometimes it feels like when you're negotiating, that's like your only leverage, but it really has no value. And so my whole thing is just be a human, like be a human. And I've said that before and I'll say it again, but like, just be a human. So like these people are not just our workers. They're not our help. They're not our crew. They're not our harvesters. They're other humans that we're working alongside with to achieve our goal. We do have a mission, and it's very crystal clear that we're trying to build something good, build something sustainable, both in a financial sense and an environmental sense, and with a strong community focus. So 85% of our sales are within 12 miles of our farm. That's been sort of a sales end of things. All of our labor comes from the two counties that our farm is kind of on the border of two counties. So we're also not like bringing people in from far away. So, I think being part of that fabric of the community matters from sales and from labor. But you got to treat them how you want to be treated. I've worked on farms and been treated like shit. I was never going to do that. The thing you have to understand is for 2 years, Ann and I built this farm with just the two of us. Half the time we were living in a camper, then we were living in a pole barn. But like, there's not a task on our farm that somebody's doing that I haven't already done. So there's no like, well, I'm going to stay in my office and keep doing this. I didn't even have an office. I was out doing everything. And so I think working alongside people makes a really, really big difference. And also making sure that they get to see many different aspects of the operation. So like, it wasn't like, oh, good, you're here. Today we'll weed because you're here. Like, okay, great, you're here. Well, today this is what we're going to do because this is what we need to do. And we're going to do it together. And so that's been pretty significant.
That was incredible. You know, Brian is one of those thinkers of our farming generation. You know, he's one of the millennials that is going to take the regenerative farming system and the regenerative farming movement to that next level. And I love getting him involved in things like this because he just has such wisdom to pass on to us. So we had a fabulous conversation, went over an hour. He talks about some of the really innovative things that they are doing as a company to make their employees better and just really help keep their employees for longer. Because he's a fan of having pro employees that are sticking with you long term. And so it's great to have him on to really chat about how they are making that work in some place that, you know, a lot of people say is a very hard place to have a farm, you know, very far north in Michigan in the cold weather. And they're a year-round farm. So it's very cool to hear that from what he was saying and just how they're making that work. So our next speaker is Nathan Cash. Now, Nathan is the co-owner of On the Acre Farm, which provides microgreens, specialty greens, and edible flowers to the Houston metro area. He shares how they started the farm, how microgreen sales have exploded even in a crowded marketplace by focusing on exactly what the customer wants, innovating constantly, and providing great customer service. So let me share with you a quick clip about how Nathan is really using farmers markets to leverage, as well as how he's just using social media to find new customers all the time.
This is our first year doing them, and we're loving them. We still have begonias from the summer. They're slowly fading out, but we put out about 2,500 flowers a week. and every one of them is priced individually. So you're paying for every single flower that you get.
Well, you have to, because you're taking care to harvest every single one.
Exactly. We count them. We sell them in groups of 25, 50, or 100. And if you buy 100, you get the best price. If you buy 25, you get the worst price. And if you buy 50, you get the average price.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right. So then you're also doing food prep people, and you said you've worked with those. How did you develop those kind of relationships with the food prep people?
I'm in a group on Facebook. It's a local foodie group that has around 21,000 members, I believe. It's huge. Yeah, it's really well run, and it's just about food. And so I go on there on Saturdays. It's called Small Business Saturday. And you can post. That's the only time you're allowed to advertise your business, and only inside of that thread. Yeah. So I don't actually advertise in the thread. I scour it. I search for anybody who's a potential client, and then I send them a message and say, hey, can I come by? Would you like a sample? Do you have any use for microgreens, edible flowers, or anything like that? And that's how I got the cupcakes. That's how I got, all of these small businesses. And they're all local, which is so cool. That's the type of people we want to work with. Yeah. So anyways, that's how we found the meal prep people. Their name is Prepping Sisters. And it's just two sisters that, wanted to get more healthy and started cooking keto for themselves. And then people started asking them to do keto for them. And it became a business. So I just went there one day and I brought a whole bunch of samples, and we we worked together to develop new products to put on her menu, because her clients go online and order what they want, and she delivers them to their house twice a week. So the main thing that we sell with them is our microgreen salad. So that's our mix of microgreens, our standard mix of 16 different microgreens that we sell to all of our restaurants. And on top of that, or inside of it, we add a few snoodles, some pea tendrils, 3 begonias, which will be switching when we run out of begonias.
All right, so there you go. You hear Nathan share exactly his strategy for finding new local businesses to work with. And he's in Houston, so not necessarily one of these larger Northeast or West Coast cities that have been known for the foodie scene. So he's really working to develop that as he goes. So our next speaker is Erika. Now, Erika, we've done a lot with her in the past. She and I have done a podcast episode together. She and I run the Farmers Market Success course together, which has been a ton of fun. And we're so excited about the results our members get as they double their farmers market sales. But what we brought Erika on was really to share a overview of the system that we have developed for teaching people about farmers markets, because it's been so successful. So what I want to do in this clip is just share a little bit about how Erika and I think about farmers markets.
Like we already mentioned, make your display do most of the work. So a lot of times people get into farming because they're introverts, right? They don't want to do a lot of peopling, as we say. So a lot of times people say like, oh, going to market, it's so hard. Like you have to interact with so many people. Well, what if you made your display do part of the work for you? What if you had a really beautiful display that drew people in? So they were already captivated. They're already excited to see what you have and to give you money because you stand out so much from your peers, right? So there are, again, ways to just really make your stand pop. Then once they're in, you want to customer service the heck out of them. So the more that, you can think about it in your own life too. Places where you love to spend money, places where you love to go back and spend money, where you tell your friends to go and spend money, chances are they have amazing customer service. So, don't just be sitting there on your phone, hoping you don't have to talk to anyone, right? Because that's not really going to enhance an overall customer service feeling. You want to really make sure you are serving people and fulfilling their needs. Next, people love a good promo. What we want you to do, what I really want to encourage you to do, is instead of thinking in terms of how we often think of promotions, which is discounting something as a way to encourage people to buy, I want you at the next market you're at to think of a promotion that actually encourages people to buy more.
So there you go. There you hear a little bit about how Erika teaches sales and service at farmers markets. And guys, I want to let you know it works. So Erika goes on, I think about it's a 40-minute or 45-minute presentation. She walks you through the entire system, shares some tips and tricks on how to make that work. So you're definitely going to want to come and check out that presentation. That's on day 2, the marketing day, marketing and sales day. And we've got a ton of great speakers on that day. We've got Erika on that day. We've got Nick Burton on that day. We've got Karina Bench on that day. We've got some great farmer case studies that are just sharing exactly the innovative things that they're doing to market themselves. Our next speaker is William. Now, William is a mushroom mycologist. So he actually specializes right now in cordyceps mushrooms, but his background is wide and varied. And he's actually traveled the entire U.S. visiting different mushroom places and different mushroom growers. And so in this presentation, he really shares about bootstrapping, getting started with no money, and training the next generation. And so I really wanted to share this clip about his journey into becoming a mycologist.
Or from the wild to producing it themselves. So I always want people to feel comfortable in the fact that you don't need a lot of equipment or you don't need a lot of background training to begin cultivating mushrooms. So I found that teaching from my home really kind of solidifies that idea, and then a lot of people feel confident in the fact that they could do it from their home as well. And even children can do it. So we have, I believe she was 10 years old in this picture. We had a 10-year-old at one of my classes, and she was cloning cordyceps mushrooms. So really, you don't need much technical skill or much background to be able to start working with mushrooms. And now I do know a lot of kids that are in high school that have very successful mushroom grows, which is really cool to see more young people getting involved.
Because it's not that hard, is what you're saying.
No, it's not that hard to grow mushrooms.
And that previous picture you're showing on the right there, is that actually where your cordyceps grow is?
No, this was one of my old labs. So any of the jars or anything that you see on those shelves are just in an incubation stage before they put into a fruiting room. So here we have one of my old grow spaces. This was in a basement, and the walls were covered with plastic film to make sure that I was protecting my mushrooms from the walls, and that I was also protecting the walls from the humid environment that the mushrooms require. It's really good when you're working in basements or spaces with concrete floors that have drains in the floor, so that you can spray excess moisture into the room and be able to have it go down a drain instead of it being pooled up. Whenever I first started growing mushrooms, I really didn't have any funds. Personally, I dropped out of high school and had a child very young, so there was a lot of odds stacked against me as far as developing economic wealth or developing any sort of finances. So I didn't really have anything to spare when I started. So I had to figure out how to do it with no money, basically. So I ended up using a lot of space from family members and things like that. And the equipment that I used was oftentimes something I found on Craigslist or something that was really cheap. So this is the reason I bring this up is because you could see the mushrooms are hanging from ropes from the ceiling. And this paracord is way cheaper than buying these racks in the back. Those racks can be anywhere from $40 to $100 per unit. And if you just get one rope of paracord, you can hang just as many mushrooms as you'd be able to hang on 6 or so of those shelving units. And this worked out really well. Oftentimes we'll tell people I'm a graduate of YouTube University because I've used YouTube to learn most of the things. And on YouTube, there's a lot of videos from third world countries where they're growing mushrooms, or Southern Asian countries where they don't have as much funds to be putting into their grows. So you see a lot of innovation like this. And a lot of the large scale mushroom farms do a lot of really innovative techniques in the that can be utilized in a more low-tech type methodology.
So there you go. Here's some great information about how William's passion for teaching the next generation, how he has a passion for training, his background, getting started, and how he's been hacking grows for mushrooms. And so William shares a ton of information, talks us through the exact steps for setting up a low-tech mushroom farm, and exactly about the kind of different types of mushrooms, different ways you can grow it inside, outside, in your garden, growing mushrooms in your garden as well. So it's a fascinating conversation, and always privileged to hear William share his expertise. All right, so our final presenter, and actually there's 30 presentations in this online summit or online conference, so we're only scratching the surface here. I mean, we have everything from elderberries, how to grow elderberries, how to sell elderberries. We have Ben Falk talking about growing wildlife, 9 different techniques that he's using in Upper Vermont to grow wildlife. We've got people talking about hemp, about selling hemp. We've got a case study with Lex and Beth. They're north of Toronto, and they're showing how they've built the farm that they want to farm. So a lot of people, you see them on YouTube, you see them in books, say, this is how you're supposed to farm. Well, Lex and Beth said, we want to farm the way we want to farm. And so they built a farm that serves them and their needs. So it's really cool to hear them talk about how they've grown over the last couple years. So there's a ton of speakers in this conference. I'm not going to share them all here. I want to give a few surprises on the sales page and in the summit. So I highly encourage you to go to thrivingfarmersummit.com and check out all the speakers, sign up to join us. And if you can't make the live dates, the 6th, 7th, 8th, there is additional ways you can get those presentations as well to review at any time that you want. So here, our final presenter is Charlotte Smith. Now, Charlotte Smith has been someone I've been following for a while. She teaches marketing from the heart, and she does a fabulous job going all around the country and teaching online classes to farmers on how to sell their products. And so in this presentation, I really wanted to share with you guys a little clip that she talks about what we're up against and the advantage that small farms have. So check out this clip with Charlotte Smith.
Whole Foods and now New Seasons in our area, they make like 2 clicks on their computer, and when they come home for their dinner break, they have grass-fed beef and local vegetables at their doorstep. Mm-hmm. That is what we're competing against as farmers. This is, I think everyone knows this is happening, but what happens is the reason people will buy from farmers and pay more money, and we all know how inconvenient it is. You can't just have it drop, click a button and it shows up at your door a couple hours later. They buy from us because of relationships, because we have shown them how important they are to us, not because we've tried to force them to understand how hard we work to produce something that's really expensive.
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead.
There, you said what Amazon can never provide is that relationship. They cannot, even if Amazon went out and tried to build a farm and put a farmer on it, that relationship would just not be the same.
Nope. And I have had big, huge corporate farmers come to me with tens of thousands of acres, selling a lot of product online this way, click, and they'll say, okay, we need you to teach us how to market from the heart so that we can sell more like you guys are. And once you get that big, they can't. They have to go a different route. Mm-hmm. That is that is the advantage that we as farmers have, is when you do have that relationship, they will pay more for your product. Mm. If you don't have a relationship, they're looking for the cheapest, most convenient deal, which is the big, huge corporations.
All right. So there you go. That clip from Charlotte is absolutely incredible because it really gives you the exact step to what you need to do to sell your product at a premium price, is create relationships. And so the rest of the talk, we go into exactly how to create those relationships. She's got 3 steps to a profitable farm, and she shares those 3 steps, and then a lot of tips and tricks along the way of how you can make that and implement that easy and, make marketing easy on your farm. It doesn't have to be a lot of work, and she shares how to do that. So again, I highly encourage you guys, join us for the Thriving Farmer Summit. Did I mention it's 100% free to join us? I really am just incredibly grateful to all these farmers and educators that spent so many hours with me on Zoom, going back and forth, sharing their information, sharing the presentations, and just sharing their time and their expertise. If you were to pay every one of these presenters for their time, it would be thousands of dollars, and you get it all for free. They've been very generous to put it together with me in this Thriving Farmer Summit. So I don't know how many countless cups of coffee I've consumed, hours I've spent in front of the computer. Our editor, our video editor, did a fabulous job of editing all the talks down. We've got our graphics people, I've got our web team, which built out the entire beautiful summit experience for you. On the days of the summit, you can just click and watch the presentations, then get the buttons to go directly to these people's websites and find out more information about them. So come on over, www.thrivingfarmersummit.com. and grab your free ticket today. Can't wait for you to join us. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer podcast